If you show that you're not scared of them, then they will almost always, in every instance of self-defensive violence that I know of in the South, whether it's Robert Williams in Monroe, North Carolina, whether it's the Deacons for Defense and Justice in Jonesboro, Louisiana, or Bogalusa, Louisiana, whether it's the group in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, all places where there was actual gunfire between white mobs or night riders and black people, white people run. When the night riders in Monroe, North Carolina decided to attack Dr. Albert Perry, who they decided was the real man behind the resistance to white supremacy in Monroe, North Carolina, because he was wealthy, relatively wealthy. He was a doctor, and he was a Catholic, and he was from Austin, Texas. And when they attacked, when they came to attack after a Klan rally, the word had gotten out, so Robert Williams and a whole bunch of the people in the, officially I guess it was the Monroe NAACP, but actually Robert Williams had also organized a rifle club affiliated with the National Rifle Association, which was known as the Black Guards. And when these guys were there, and they had on helmets, and when the Klan came, they opened fire on the Klan. But they fired high and they fired low. And they clearly, although they could have, were not trying to kill them. They could have killed them. These are trained World War II and Korean War veterans. They could have killed these guys, because these guys weren't looking for self-defense from black people in the first place. But they didn't. They consciously chose to fire above their heads or low. And you see that repeated in Louisiana with the Deacons for Defense and Justice. You see that repeated in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and you see it repeated by individuals. C.O. Chin in Mississippi is a legend. I mean, there's nobody in Mississippi that was like Mr. Chin. He was a small farmer. He ran a big-time rhythm and blues nightclub. He was a bootlegger. He was a lot of stuff. And he walked around. He's the first black man I ever saw wearing a pistol in a holster tied down on his hip. He provided, and this was a Corps project, and he provided arm protection for the Corps workers in Madison County, Mississippi. Dave Dennis told me this story about C.O. Chin, because Dave was the project director over there. And Dave said, and I tell it in the book, Dave says he had gone to court one day because one of the workers was being brought before the judge for some kind of traffic violation. So Dave was there. He says while he was there, while this was going on, C.O. Chin walked in, and he had his pistol on. And the judge looks over at C.O. Chin and says something like, "Now, C.O., you know you can't come in here with that pistol." But the sheriff is also there, Billy Noble, and everybody knew there was bad blood between Sheriff Billy Noble and C.O. Chin. So C.O. Chin looks over at Billy Noble and says, "As long as that SOB over there got his pistol, I'm going to keep mine." Right? This is the courtroom. Dave says, "I'm thinking we're all dead in here." Looking for a shootout. But then the judge intervenes and says, "Now, boys, let's be good boys. Why don't you put your pistols on the table over here?" And so both men do. They ease out their pistol, kind of look at each other, and walk over to the table and put the pistol on the table. That's Dave Dennis's story about C.O. Chin. And everybody that worked in that county has a C.O. Chin story. Mario Suarez, Fluky, Dave Dennis, George Raymond, if he was alive. They all got C.O. Chin. I never worked that county or that region of Mississippi. But when the night riders shot at his house, I'm told, C.O. Chin didn't just fire back. Then he got in his car and chased them to the gas station, the Ku Klux Klan gas, and shot. He served 3 years in prison for it. But he was that kind of man. Nobody, black or white, messed with C.O. Chin, arguably the most legendary of all the men and women with guns willing to use them in Mississippi. He probably is the most legendary figure. Although there are guys in Mississippi and women. Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer said once, she says, I keep a shotgun in every corner of my bedroom, and the first cracker tries to throw some dynamite on my porch, won't write his mama again. So there are men and women in this gun tradition, but C.O. Chin stands head and shoulders above them, I think.
Why do you mention C.O. Chin and Fannie Lou Hamer what's the point you'd like us to leave with about this balance and this dichotomy between violence and nonviolence, guns and no guns, and how it sort of made the movement, it was so essential to the movement?
One, I think the dichotomy between violence and nonviolence is a false one. I think the dichotomy made between violence and nonviolence is a false one. The average person doesn't call himself, even if he or she uses a gun, doesn't see himself as a violent person, nor does the average person, even if they're involved in the nonviolent movement, see themselves as a nonviolent person. There are a handful of people who would describe themselves as philosophically committed to nonviolence as a way of life, and that's an important part of how they define themselves. That's very, very few people. I mean, people just see themselves as people. As Hartman Turnbull, I'm out here protecting my family. You know, he told Howell Raines in his Howell Raines's anthology of interviews with movement people that came out some years ago. He tells Howell Raines, he says, I had a wife and I had a daughter, and I love my wife just like the white man loves his'n, and just like the white man will die for his'n, I'll die for mine. That's Hartman Turnbull. That's how people seem to. So the important thing to take away is these are human beings, and their responses are human responses. It's simple to understand why people would use guns to protect their houses, their families, because they're human beings, and that's what human beings do. They try and protect their loved ones. They try and protect it as best they can. People made very hard-headed choices about when to use a weapon and when not to use a weapon. We're not talking here about the organization of guerrilla armies. We're not talking here about the organization even of retaliatory violence. We're talking about the responses to terrorism. Night riders come through, shoot at your house. You know, as one farmer said, you got to be a very little man not to do something, you know. And that's a human response, you know. It's just that the experience I'm talking about is our experience in Mississippi, which is the experience of black people in Mississippi. You can go to many parts of the world and encounter the same kind of responses to violence and terror. I think that's extremely important, because one of my criticisms of the history is like black people are doing something unique. Well, no. If you're a slave, then I don't care where you come from, Africa, Asia, Serbia. If you're a slave, yeah, you'd be inclined to revolt against your slavery. The best way to understand that is that a human response to oppression. People resist it as best they can. Sometimes it's harder sometimes to resist oppression than it is at other times to resist oppression. But the human desire is to resist oppression.